The handcuffs clicked shut around Marcus Williams's wrists, with a sound that would haunt his 7-year-old daughter for years to come. Sophia's screams pierced the afternoon air of Maplewood Community Park, where moments earlier she had been giggling on the swings, her mixed-race features glowing with joy under the gentle September sun. Now she stood frozen in terror as 2 police officers separated her from her parents, one white mother and one black father, while a crowd of onlookers gathered like vultures around fresh carrion. "Please, you don't understand," Sarah Williams pleaded, her voice cracking as she reached desperately toward her daughter. "She's our child. This is our daughter." Officer Martinez, a veteran with 20 years on the force, kept his hand firmly on Marcus's shoulder while his partner, Officer Chen, knelt down to Sophia's eye level. The little girl's tears streamed down her cheeks as she looked back and forth between her parents and the strangers in uniform who had suddenly invaded her safe world. "Sweetheart, we need to ask you some questions," Officer Chen said gently, though her voice carried the weight of protocol. "Can you tell me your name?" "Sophia Williams," the child whispered, her small body trembling. "I want my mommy and daddy." Across the playground, partially hidden behind the climbing structure, Karen Donovan watched the scene unfold with satisfaction burning in her chest. Her perfectly manicured fingers gripped her iPhone tighter as she recorded everything, already imagining how this would look on the community Facebook page. The anonymous 911 call she had placed 20 minutes earlier was now bearing fruit in the most delicious way possible. The day had started like any other Saturday for the Williams family. Sarah had woken early to prepare Sophia's favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes, shaped like butterflies, while Marcus tended to their small garden behind their modest 2-story home on Elm Street. Their neighborhood, once predominantly white, had slowly become more diverse over the past decade, though not everyone welcomed the change with open arms. Sophia had bounded into the kitchen at 8 o'clock sharp, her curly brown hair still messy from sleep, wearing her favorite purple dress, with the sparkly unicorn on the front. At 7 years old, she possessed the infectious enthusiasm that only children could muster for simple pleasures, like a trip to the playground. "Can we go to the big park today, Mommy?" she had asked, climbing onto her father's lap as he sipped his coffee. "I want to show you how high I can swing now." Marcus had smiled and kissed the top of his daughter's head. "Of course, princess. But first, finish your breakfast and brush your teeth." The Williams family had moved to Maplewood 3 years earlier, when Marcus got promoted to regional sales manager at his pharmaceutical company. Sarah, a part-time graphic designer, had been initially hesitant about leaving their diverse urban neighborhood for the suburbs. But Marcus had convinced her that better schools and safer streets would benefit Sophia in the long run. For the most part, they had integrated well into the community. Sarah volunteered at Sophia's school, helped organize the annual fall festival, and even joined the PTA last year. Marcus coached Little League and participated in the Neighborhood Watch program. They were model citizens by any measure. Yet something always felt slightly off, as if they were perpetually auditioning for acceptance rather than simply belonging. The first sign of trouble had emerged 6 months earlier during a PTA meeting where the position of vice president had become vacant. Sarah had been encouraged by several parents to run for the position, given her marketing background and fresh perspective on fundraising initiatives. The election had been surprisingly contentious, with Karen Donovan, a stay-at-home mother who had held various PTA positions for the past 8 years, mounting what could only be described as a hostile campaign against Sarah's candidacy. Karen had questioned Sarah's commitment to the school during public meetings, subtly suggesting that working mothers couldn't devote adequate time to volunteer positions. She had whispered to other parents about how certain people were trying to change the character of their community, always careful to never say anything overtly racist, but making her implications crystal clear to those who chose to hear them. Despite Karen's efforts, Sarah had won the election by a substantial margin, much to Karen's public humiliation. The defeat had festered in Karen like an infected wound, growing more toxic with each passing month, as Sarah successfully implemented new programs and earned praise from other parents and school administrators. Now, as Karen watched the police questioning Sophia, while her parents stood helpless several feet away, she felt vindicated. Her anonymous call had been simple, but effective: a concerned citizen reporting a potential kidnapping at the playground, describing how a black man and white woman were acting suspiciously with a child who seemed distressed and didn't appear to belong with them. The responding officers had no choice but to investigate such a serious allegation. Even though their gut instincts suggested something didn't add up, Marcus and Sarah's interaction with Sophia had appeared completely natural and loving when they first arrived on the scene. But protocol demanded they separate the family until they could verify the child's identity and relationship to the adults. "Sir, I need you to remain calm while we sort this out," Officer Martinez said, as Marcus struggled against the restraints. "The sooner you cooperate, the sooner we can resolve this situation." Cooperate. Marcus's voice rose despite his efforts to stay composed. "I'm standing in a public park with my wife and daughter, and you've put me in handcuffs based on what a phone call from some stranger." Sarah stepped forward, pulling her wallet from her purse with shaking hands. "Officers, please. Here's my driver's license. Here's our insurance card with Sophia listed as our dependent. I can call our pediatrician, our neighbors, anyone you need to verify that she's our daughter." Officer Chen examined the documents while continuing to speak softly to Sophia. "Honey, are these people your parents?" Sophia nodded emphatically, tears still streaming. "Yes, that's my daddy and my mommy. They didn't do anything bad. We were just playing." The crowd of onlookers had grown larger, drawn by the unusual spectacle of police activity in their quiet neighborhood park. Some parents pulled their own children closer, whispering among themselves about what terrible thing might be happening. Others recognized the Williams family and looked confused by the scene unfolding before them. "Excuse me, officers," called out Mrs. Peterson, an elderly woman who lived 2 houses down from the Williams family. She approached slowly with her small dog in tow. "That's Sophia Williams and her parents. I've known them for 3 years. They live on Elm Street." Officer Martinez looked up with relief, evident in his expression. "Ma'am, can you provide verification of their identity?" "Absolutely," Mrs. Peterson replied firmly. "Marcus and Sarah are wonderful parents. Sophia plays in my yard sometimes when they're working in their garden. This is absolutely ridiculous." As more neighbors stepped forward to vouch for the Williams family, Officer Chen's radio crackled with an update from dispatch. The 911 caller had been anonymous, providing no name or contact information, which immediately raised red flags about the legitimacy of the complaint. Behind the playground equipment, Karen felt her confidence beginning to waver as she watched neighbors defending the family she had hoped to see destroyed. She hadn't anticipated such strong community support for the Williams family, nor had she expected the investigation to move so quickly toward vindication rather than validation of her accusations. "Officer Martinez," his partner said quietly, approaching with Sophia's hand gently in hers. "The child has confirmed multiple times that these are her parents. We have neighbors vouching for them, proper identification, and no actual evidence of any wrongdoing. I think we need to release the father and apologize to this family." Marcus felt the handcuffs being removed, the metal cold against his skin as the restraints fell away. But the damage was already done. Sophia would never forget seeing her father treated like a criminal. Sarah would replay this moment in nightmares for months to come. The entire family would carry the psychological scars of this humiliation forever. "We're very sorry for this misunderstanding," Officer Martinez said formally, though his tone carried genuine regret. "We received a report that we were obligated to investigate, but it appears the information was incorrect." Incorrect. Sarah's voice turned sharp with anger. "Someone called in a false report about our family, caused our daughter to be traumatized, and had my husband handcuffed like a criminal. And you call it incorrect?" Marcus pulled Sophia into his arms, feeling her small body still trembling against his chest. "Daddy's okay, Princess. Everything's going to be okay." But Sophia looked up at her father with eyes that suddenly seemed much older than her 7 years. "Why did they hurt you? Daddy, what did we do wrong?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire that couldn't be extinguished. Marcus and Sarah exchanged a look that contained volumes of unspoken fear, anger, and heartbreak. They had tried so hard to protect Sophia from the ugly realities of prejudice and racism, hoping to give her a childhood free from such burdens. In the span of 30 minutes, that innocence had been shattered. As the police officers departed and the crowd began to disperse, Karen slipped away from behind the playground equipment, her recording still running on her phone. She had expected this video to go viral as evidence of her successful citizen's arrest, but now she realized it could serve as dangerous evidence of her malicious intent. The Williams family gathered their things slowly, Sophia clinging to both parents as they prepared to leave the playground that had been the site of such joy and terror within the same hour. Other parents approached them with apologies and offers of support, but the damage felt irreparable. "Sarah, I'm so sorry this happened to you," said Jennifer Morrison, another PTA member who had worked closely with Sarah on recent fundraising events. "This is absolutely unconscionable. Do you have any idea who might have called this in?" Sarah shook her head, though suspicions were already forming in her mind. The timing felt too convenient, coming just days after the school board had announced its intention to implement new diversity and inclusion programs that Sarah had proposed, and Karen had vocally opposed. Over the following days, word of the incident spread through the community like wildfire. Social media buzzed with outrage and support for the Williams family, while others whispered about the need to be more vigilant about suspicious activity in their neighborhoods. The divide revealed itself in stark terms, with some residents rallying around the family, while others suggested that maybe the 911 caller had simply been trying to protect children. Sophia returned to school on Monday, but her teacher, Mrs. Hamilton, noticed immediate changes in the normally outgoing child. Sophia seemed withdrawn, jumping at unexpected sounds and clinging to familiar adults. During recess, she stayed close to the building rather than playing with friends, as if open spaces now felt dangerous. "She keeps asking me if the police are coming to school," Mrs. Hamilton told Sarah during a phone call. "I'm concerned about the psychological impact this incident has had on her." Sarah scheduled an appointment with the school counselor and began researching child psychologists who specialized in trauma. The irony wasn't lost on her that in trying to provide Sophia with a safer environment, they had inadvertently exposed her to a different kind of violence entirely. Meanwhile, Marcus found himself second-guessing every interaction with strangers. At the grocery store, he wondered if other customers were watching him suspiciously. At Sophia's soccer practice, he questioned whether other parents were comfortable with his presence or if they saw him as some kind of threat to their children's safety. The breaking point came 2 weeks later during a community town hall meeting about playground safety. The meeting had been called in response to the Williams family incident, ostensibly to discuss how such misunderstandings could be prevented in the future. But as the evening progressed, it became clear that not everyone viewed it as a misunderstanding at all. Karen Donovan arrived early, positioning herself in the third row, where she could be seen by the maximum number of attendees. She had spent days crafting her talking points, preparing to present herself as the concerned citizen who had simply been looking out for child welfare. In her mind, she had transformed from malicious caller to community hero. The meeting room at City Hall filled quickly, with over 200 residents in attendance. Mayor Patricia Collins opened the session with prepared remarks about community unity and the importance of treating all residents with dignity and respect. But when the floor was opened for public comment, the veneer of civility quickly cracked. "I think we need to address the elephant in the room," said Harold Brennan, a retired police officer who had lived in Maplewood for 40 years. This incident happened because someone saw something suspicious and reported it. That's exactly what we tell people to do. How are we supposed to protect our children if we can't trust our own instincts? A murmur of agreement rippled through one section of the crowd, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Sarah felt Marcus tense beside her, his jaw clenching as he struggled to remain silent. Jennifer Morrison stood up from her seat in the middle of the room. "Mr. Brennan, with all due respect, there was nothing suspicious about a family playing at a playground. The Williams family has been part of this community for 3 years. Sarah volunteers at the school. Marcus coaches Little League. Their daughter was clearly happy and comfortable with her parents. The only suspicious thing was someone's decision to involve law enforcement in a completely normal family outing." "But how was the caller supposed to know all that?" Karen interjected, her voice carrying across the room with practiced innocence. "From a distance, it might have looked concerning. We're always telling people that if they see something, they should say something. I don't think we should discourage people from looking out for children's safety." Sarah's head snapped toward Karen's voice, meeting her eyes for the first time since the incident. Something in Karen's expression, a flash of satisfaction, quickly masked, confirmed Sarah's growing suspicions about who had made that anonymous call. "Mrs. Donovan," Sarah said, standing slowly and fixing Karen with a steady stare. "That's an interesting perspective. Tell me, what exactly would have looked concerning about a family at a playground? Was it the fact that my daughter was laughing and playing freely? Was it that she was calling us mommy and daddy? Or was it something else entirely that made you think she was in danger?" The room fell silent, tension crackling in the air like electricity before a thunderstorm. Karen's face flushed, her carefully prepared talking points suddenly seeming inadequate under Sarah's direct questioning. I don't know what you're implying," Karen stammered. "I'm simply saying that citizens have a right to report suspicious activity." "Suspicious activity," Marcus repeated, standing beside his wife. "Like a black father playing with his daughter at a public playground. Like an interracial family existing in your neighborhood. Like parents who don't look the way you think parents should look." The accusation hung heavy in the air. Several people in the audience began looking between Karen and the Williams family with dawning understanding, while others shifted nervously in their seats. "Now wait just a minute." Karen's voice rose defensively. "I never said anything about race. I resent the implication that I would ever—" "Then what did you see that was so suspicious?" Sarah pressed. "Because I was there. I saw my daughter having the time of her life on those swings. I saw my husband pushing her higher and higher while she giggled with pure joy. I saw a family spending quality time together on a beautiful Saturday afternoon. So please, enlighten all of us about what part of that scene struck you as concerning enough to call 911. Karen's mouth opened and closed without sound, her face cycling through shades of red as the spotlight of community attention focused on her with uncomfortable intensity. She had expected to control this narrative, to position herself as the responsible citizen who had acted in good faith. Instead, she found herself backed into a corner with nowhere to run. "I think we should move on to solutions rather than accusations," suggested Councilman Robert Hayes, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation had taken. Solutions. Sarah turned her attention to the councilman. The solution is for people to examine their own biases before they weaponize law enforcement against innocent families. The solution is for our community to acknowledge that what happened to us was not a misunderstanding. It was racial profiling, pure and simple. The room erupted in a cacophony of voices, some shouting agreement while others protested the characterization of the incident. Mayor Collins banged her gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order to the increasingly chaotic meeting. In the midst of the commotion, Karen stood up abruptly, gathering her purse and coat. "I don't have to sit here and be attacked like this," she announced loudly. "I was trying to protect children, and if that makes me a villain in your eyes, then so be it." She began pushing her way toward the aisle, but Sarah's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Mrs. Donovan, one more question before you go." Karen stopped, her back still turned to the room. "How did you know to look for us at the playground that day?" Sarah asked. "Because I don't remember mentioning our plans to anyone at school or in the neighborhood. So I'm curious how you happened to be in the perfect position to observe us and make that call." The question struck home like a physical blow. Karen's shoulders tensed, and for a moment she seemed to waver. Then she resumed her exit without answering, leaving behind a room full of people who were beginning to put the pieces together. After Karen's dramatic departure, the meeting gradually returned to more productive discussions about community relations and conflict resolution. But the damage had been done. Lines had been drawn, and everyone in attendance now understood that this incident was far from the random misunderstanding it had initially appeared to be. In the days following the town hall meeting, the Williams family began receiving unexpected support from corners of the community they hadn't anticipated. Mrs. Chen, whose son was in Sophia's class, stopped by with homemade cookies and an offer to carpool. The Johnsons from 3 streets over invited them to a backyard barbecue. Even some of the parents who had initially seemed uncomfortable around them began making an effort to include them in social activities. But the most significant development came when Jennifer Morrison approached Sarah after a PTA meeting with a proposal that would change everything. "Sarah, I've been thinking about what happened at the town hall," Jennifer said, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. "I think we need to find out for certain who made that 911 call, and I think I know how we can do it." Jennifer explained that her husband worked for the city's IT department and had access to public records requests. While 911 calls were typically protected, there were ways to obtain information about anonymous tips, especially if there were grounds to suspect the report was made in bad faith. "It won't be easy, and it might take some time," Jennifer warned. "But if someone in our community is making false reports to target specific families, we need to know about it. This could happen to other people." Sarah felt a mix of hope and trepidation at the prospect of finally learning the truth. Part of her already knew who had made the call, but having proof would be entirely different from having suspicions. The investigation process took nearly 2 months, involving multiple records requests, legal consultations, and careful coordination with sympathetic city officials who were equally concerned about the potential for abuse of emergency services. During this time, the Williams family tried to rebuild their sense of security and normalcy. though the incident continued to cast a shadow over their daily lives. Sophia had begun showing signs of improvement with regular counseling sessions, but she still occasionally asked questions that broke her parents' hearts. "Mommy, if we move to a different town, will people still think Daddy is bad?" she asked one evening, while Sarah was tucking her into bed. Sarah sat on the edge of Sophia's bed, smoothing her daughter's curly hair away from her face. "Daddy isn't bad, sweetheart. And most people know that. Sometimes, though, people make mistakes or have feelings in their hearts that make them do wrong things. That's not about Daddy. It's about them." But why did they have to be mean to us? The question had no easy answer, and Sarah struggled to find words that would make sense to a 7-year-old without destroying what remained of her faith in human goodness. Sometimes people are afraid of things they don't understand, or they're angry about something else entirely, and they take those feelings out on people who don't deserve it. But there are many more good people than bad people, and the good people are working to make sure this doesn't happen again. The breakthrough came on a cold December morning when Jennifer called Sarah with barely contained excitement. "Sarah, you need to sit down. We got the records, and you're not going to believe what we found." The 911 call records revealed not just Karen's phone number, but also a pattern of calls she had made over the past 2 years. Anonymous reports about suspicious activity that corresponded remarkably with the schedules and locations of families Karen had conflicts with through the PTA or neighborhood associations. There had been a call about the Martinez family when they were having a backyard quinceañera that went past Karen's preferred noise levels. Another report about Mr. Kim, who had been walking his elderly mother through the neighborhood for physical therapy after her hip surgery. 3 separate calls about teenagers who had been waiting at the bus stop outside Karen's house, all of whom happened to be Black or Latino. "She's been using 911 like her personal complaint hotline," Jennifer explained. And the Williams family incident wasn't her first time making false reports about interracial couples. There's a call from last year about a couple at the community pool who she claimed were acting inappropriately with children. Same pattern, same racist assumptions. Armed with this evidence, Sarah and Marcus consulted with an attorney who specialized in civil rights cases. The lawyer, David Chen, reviewed the documentation with growing amazement and anger. "This is one of the clearest cases of harassment and defamation I've seen," he told them. "Not only do we have evidence of the false report that led to your family's traumatic experience, but we can establish a pattern of discriminatory behavior that shows clear intent to harm specific community members based on their race and ethnicity." The lawsuit, filed in January, sent shockwaves through the community. The local newspaper picked up the story, and soon regional media outlets were covering what had become known as the playground case. The attention brought both support and backlash, with the Williams family receiving messages of encouragement from across the country, but also facing renewed scrutiny from those who believed they were overreacting to what should have remained a private matter. Karen Donovan hired her own attorney and initially attempted to deny the allegations, claiming that all her 911 calls had been made in good faith based on legitimate concerns for public safety. But the evidence was overwhelming, and her legal team eventually advised her that fighting the case would only result in greater financial and reputational damage. The turning point came when the playground security cameras were subpoenaed as part of the discovery process. The footage clearly showed the Williams family's interaction from multiple angles, documenting Sophia's obvious comfort and happiness with her parents. It also captured Karen positioning herself to observe the family from behind the playground equipment, her phone visible in her hand during the exact time frame when the 911 call was placed. Faced with irrefutable video evidence, Karen's legal position collapsed completely. Her attorney reached out to explore settlement options. But by then, the case had taken on significance far beyond the personal grievances of the Williams family. The district attorney's office announced that they were considering criminal charges for filing false police reports and misuse of emergency services. The city council passed new ordinances increasing penalties for knowingly false 911 calls, with provisions for civil liability when such calls resulted in discrimination or harassment. The school district launched its own investigation into Karen's behavior during PTA activities, uncovering a pattern of attempts to exclude minority families from leadership positions and social events. Several parents came forward with their own stories of Karen's subtle but persistent discrimination, painting a picture of someone who had weaponized community involvement to maintain what she saw as proper neighborhood demographics. The civil case was ultimately settled out of court, but the terms were made public as part of the agreement. Karen was required to pay substantial damages to the Williams family, covering Sophia's therapy costs, lost wages from time taken off work, and compensation for emotional distress. She was banned from all school property and community events for 5 years, and required to complete 40 hours of community service with organizations serving minority communities. Most significantly, Karen was ordered to issue a public apology that would be published in the local newspaper, read at a community meeting, and posted on all official city and school social media accounts. The apology had to acknowledge the false nature of her 911 call, take responsibility for the trauma caused to the Williams family, and commit to actively working against racial prejudice in her future actions. The day of the public apology arrived in late spring, almost exactly 1 year after the playground incident. The same community meeting room that had been the site of Karen's downfall was packed once again. But this time, the atmosphere was markedly different. There was a sense of resolution in the air, as if a festering wound was finally being properly treated. Karen walked to the podium with obvious reluctance, her usual confident demeanor replaced by visible shame and defeat. She unfolded a prepared statement with trembling hands, her voice barely audible as she began to speak. "My name is Karen Donovan, and I am here tonight to apologize to the Williams family and to this entire community for my actions on September 15th of last year. I made a false report to 911, claiming that Marcus and Sarah Williams were acting suspiciously with their daughter Sophia at Maplewood Community Park. This report was not based on any legitimate safety concerns, but rather on my own prejudices and personal grievances." Her voice grew slightly stronger as she continued, though the words seemed to cause her physical pain to speak. "My actions resulted in Sophia Williams, a 7-year-old child, being traumatized by watching her father handcuffed and treated like a criminal. I caused this family immense pain and suffering, because I could not accept that people who looked different from me deserved the same respect and consideration that I expected for my own family." In the audience, Sophia sat between her parents, now 8 years old and still in therapy, but showing remarkable resilience for someone so young. She watched Karen with the serious expression she had developed since the incident, her childhood innocence forever altered, but her spirit gradually healing. "I want everyone in this room to understand that my actions were driven by racism. Plain and simple. I saw an interracial family enjoying time together, and I decided that they didn't belong in my community. I used 911 as a weapon to try to drive them away. And in doing so, I not only harmed them, but endangered the entire principle of emergency services that exist to protect all of us." Sarah felt Marcus's hand tighten around hers as Karen's words finally acknowledged what they had known all along. The vindication felt both satisfying and hollow. Nothing could undo the trauma Sophia had experienced or erase the fear that still sometimes gripped Marcus when he took his daughter to public places. "I am deeply, profoundly sorry to Marcus, Sarah, and Sophia Williams. I am sorry to this community for betraying the trust that neighbors should have in one another. I am sorry to the police officers who were forced to respond to my false report and place a loving father in handcuffs based on my lies. And I am sorry to anyone who has ever felt unwelcome or unsafe in this community because people like me chose fear and prejudice over acceptance and understanding. Karen's voice broke completely as she reached the final paragraph of her statement. I cannot undo the harm I have caused, but I commit to spending the rest of my time in this community working to repair the damage I have done. I will be donating my time to organizations that fight against racial discrimination, and I will be seeking education and counseling to address the prejudices that led to my shameful actions. I hope that someday, the Williams family and this community can forgive me, though I understand that forgiveness must be earned through actions, not just words. She folded her statement and returned to her seat in the back row, surrounded by empty chairs, as other attendees had deliberately distanced themselves from her presence. The room remained silent for several long moments before Mayor Collins invited the Williams family to respond if they chose to do so. Sarah and Marcus exchanged glances before Sarah stood up slowly. When she reached the podium, she looked out over the crowd that had become both battlefield and healing ground for their family's journey toward justice. A year ago, my daughter's innocence was shattered by someone's decision to see danger where there was only love. Today, I hope we can all learn from this experience to ensure it never happens to another family in our community or anywhere else. Her voice remained steady and strong as she continued. Mrs. Donovan's apology is appreciated, but apologies alone cannot heal the wounds created by prejudice and hate. What matters now is what we do collectively to build a community where every family feels safe, valued, and protected. I want to thank everyone who stood up for our family during this ordeal. The neighbors who vouched for us at the playground, the parents who supported us through the investigation, the city officials who took our case seriously, and the many community members who showed us that love is stronger than hate. Sophia stood up beside her mother, having asked to say something despite her young age. Sarah lifted her up so she could reach the microphone, and the little girl's clear voice rang out across the silent room. I want other kids to know that if someone is mean to them because of what they look like, or who their family is, there are lots of good people who will help them. My mommy and daddy taught me that we should treat everyone with kindness, even when they haven't been kind to us. I hope Mrs. Donovan learns to be kind to all families, not just the ones who look like her. The wisdom and grace in Sophia's words moved many audience members to tears. Here was a child who had endured trauma that no child should face. Yet she was choosing compassion over bitterness, hope over fear. As the meeting concluded and people began filing out of the room, something had fundamentally shifted in the community's understanding of itself. The playground incident had torn away the comfortable fiction that prejudice was a problem of the past or of other places. It had forced residents to confront the reality that discrimination could live quietly among them, hiding behind smiles and community involvement until triggered by perceived threats to the established order. But the community had also demonstrated its capacity for growth and justice. When faced with clear evidence of wrongdoing, the majority had chosen to support the victims rather than defend the perpetrator. Systems had been put in place to prevent similar abuses, and conversations had begun about how to build genuine inclusivity rather than merely tolerating diversity. The Williams family remained in Maplewood, though they initially considered moving to escape the painful memories. They ultimately decided that staying and fighting had created something valuable for future families who might face similar challenges. Sophia continued her healing journey, gradually regaining her confidence and joy. though she carried lessons about human nature that most children her age never needed to learn. Marcus returned to coaching Little League with renewed purpose, mentoring children from all backgrounds and teaching them that sports, like communities, worked best when everyone was valued for their unique contributions. Sarah expanded her role in the PTA, focusing on programs that celebrated diversity and educated families about the importance of inclusion. Karen Donovan completed her community service and attended the counseling sessions required by the settlement agreement. Whether she experienced genuine transformation or simply learned to hide her prejudices more effectively remained a question mark. But her public downfall served as a powerful warning to others who might consider using emergency services as tools of harassment. Years later, when Sophia was in high school and writing a college application essay about overcoming challenges, she would reflect on how the playground incident had taught her about both the worst and best of human nature. She had learned that some people would try to diminish her because of her mixed-race heritage, but she had also discovered that many more would stand up for what was right when confronted with injustice. The essay would conclude with words that captured the resilience her family had found in the aftermath of trauma. What happened to us at that playground was meant to break our family apart and drive us out of our community. Instead, it brought us closer together and helped us build a stronger, more honest community for everyone. Sometimes the attempts to destroy us end up revealing how much love and support we actually have around us. The Maplewood Community Park still stands today, its playground equipment replaced and updated over the years. A small plaque near the entrance, installed by the City Council 3 years after the incident, reads simply, "This park welcomes all families. May this be a place where every child feels safe to play, laugh, and be themselves." On sunny Saturday afternoons, the park fills with families of every description, their children playing together without regard for the differences that sometimes divide their parents. The swings still creak in the breeze, carrying the laughter of new generations who know nothing of the day when fear and prejudice briefly cast shadows over this place of joy. And sometimes, if you listen carefully to the sounds of children at play, you can hear the echo of a truth that sustained one family through their darkest moment, that love, courage, and community solidarity will always be stronger than the forces that seek to divide us. In the end, that may be the most important lesson of all.